This video is brought to you by Dr. Kristen R. Bromley's Guitar Method Book Series and Online Music Academy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kristen Bromley. Welcome to my online academy. It's so great to have you joining me here in these online lessons. It's a Theory Thursday, and I love music theory, don't you? I'm so delighted to bring this course to you. Now, in this lesson, we're going to look at how all the different types of chords that we've been looking at lately, 7th chords, 6th chords, 9th, 11th, and 13th chords, altered dominant chords, all those different types of chords that we've been looking at, how they fit into a minor key. In the last lesson, we looked at how they fit into a major key, so here in this lesson we're looking at how they fit into a minor key. Previously in this series we've looked at creating chord progressions in a major key and a minor key. So here we're looking at adding these extra colors that we've been learning about in those keys, how we could add them into the different chords that we might use. So pretty cool. Now, if you've seen those previous lessons, if you haven't, you may want to check them out. If you've seen them, you know that in a minor key, there's more than one scale that can be used to sort of create the sounds of that key, the chords of that key. And so that gives us some different options. I've sort of just kind of synthesized it up here on the board, and we'll go through some of those different options here. So, in a minor key, our one chord, our tonic is minor, obviously. If I use C minor as an example, so it's going to be a minor chord. We can have the major sixth added to that and turn that into a minor sixth chord. We can also have it be a 6-9. We can have that ninth thrown on there as well. The tonic minor is where we actually see that minor major seventh, which is a really high tension sound, but I got a minor major seventh chord there. Of course, we could have the ninth thrown on with that one. We can also have the 11th or even the 13th. And you could have 9th, 11th, and 13th. Anything that we talked about in relation to these types of chords and how you can get more colors there still applies here, but you get all those. We also, as a tonic minor, can have the minor 7th chord. That means the minor minor 7th. Minor major 7th when we have the major 7th, minor minor 7th. The chord symbol, that's why I have it in parentheses here, doesn't actually sit that minus sign or the flat sign in front of a 7th to tell us it's lowered, but we have the minus sign as part of the chord symbol. But little parentheses there to help us know, oh, this is the minor 7th being added on. So I can have a minor 7th in there, and with that I could of course have it be a minor 9th chord. I can have that 9th thrown on. I could have the 11th thrown on. I could have the 13th thrown on with or without the 9th there. These in combination work like that too. So that's how the one chord works. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 4 chord, which is also minor. In this key that would be F minor. In this case, you can have a 6 chord, a minor 6 chord, or a minor 6-9. It doesn't happen as often, but you can have that color. Traditionally, normally, we don't have a minor major 7th chord with the 4 chord because the pitch that's coming off of doesn't really, we don't have that because the 4 chord, okay, is based off the step 4 of the scale. In C, that's an F. F, A, C would create a major 1. We know that there's an A flat, generally speaking, so we get the A, F, A flat, and C. And then there's an E flat. The E flat is the flatted third of the key of C. So a C major scale, or C minor scale, C, D, E flat, that's the flatted third. If it were an E, it would be then, if it were an E, it would be in a major key. So when it comes to the 4 chord, which has that E in there, the E flat is the flatted 7th. The E natural, which would be the major 7th, doesn't really happen in a minor key. Not to say that somebody doesn't ever throw in the minor major 7th sound over a 4 chord though. And if the melody allowed for it, we certainly could have sort of a substitution there. But diatonically speaking, we don't get a minor major 7th chord. Here we do get the minor 7th a lot, the minor minor 7th chord a lot. So our minor chord with that flatted 7th, which also could have the 9th, 11th, and 13th. So that minor 9, minor 11, minor 13. I've mentioned this in other lessons, but I do demonstrate some voicings up here. But in this Theory Thursday lessons, at this point, we're talking through the theory of it, not necessarily how to voice these things. But there are quick answer videos that can help you with that. Also with the jazz series, which is why I'm not doing it here on Theory Thursdays right now. With the jazz series, there's lots of lessons coming out to help you understand how to create these voicings. And there's no reason for me to do two basically same lessons, same types of lessons. So later on I may come back and do a Theory Thursday one that's a little bit different. But in the jazz series right now, there are lessons coming out, like a lot of lessons coming out on how to create these types of voicings. So pretty cool lessons there. So check out those lessons if you want help with these voicings. So the 4 chord, again, minor major 7th doesn't happen diatonically because that 7th is the flatted 7th that matches the 3rd of the key, the E flat in the key of C. If it were an E natural, we'd be in C major. But doesn't mean you don't ever run into having a minor major 7th chord thrown in as the 4 chord as a reason. There may be a reason for doing that. But diatonically, it doesn't fit there naturally. Okay, so that's that chord. The 2 chord is diminished naturally, though we've learned how it can also be a minor 7th. If we go and throw on the 7th, we're going to have a half diminished sound. So the D is going to be half diminished. And of course, with half diminished chords, we can throw on the 9th or the flat 9. We've learned about that. If it's a minor 7th chord, that means a minor 7th chord if that's thrown on. Or if it's as a minor chord, we can have that minor 7th, minor 9th, minor 11th, minor 13th. Any of those voicings could be there in the case of D minor. So D minor 9, D minor 11, D minor 13, D minor. Any of those are okay if it's functioning in that way. If we end up with a flat 2 chord, it's going to function as a dominant 7th chord. So it could just be major. So D flat major. Or D flat 7, of course you could have D flat 9, D flat 9, sharp 11, or D flat 13. Those kinds of things could happen here, though most often you're probably just going to see D flat 7. Okay, so the 3 chord is major, as is the 6 chord. With this one, and that would be, in our case, E flat. So we have E flat major, but we could have an E flat 6, E flat 6, 9, E flat major 7, E flat major 9, E flat major 7 sharp 11, E flat major 13. Any of those types of sounds are A-okay on the 3 and on the 6. The 6 being A flat, so A flat major 7, A flat 6, A flat 6, 9. We could have the A flat major 9, A flat major 7 sharp 11, A flat major 13. Any of those types of sounds would be okay on the 6 chord as well. So the 3 and the 6 are like that, sort of the same types of sounds that you might get with a 1 chord or a 4 chord in a major key. So pretty cool there. The 5 chord, we have a few different options. The 5 chord naturally can be minor, but we know that most of the time in a minor key we actually make it major. If it's a minor chord, we can throw on that minor 7th, that 9th, that 11th, that 13th, any of those types of sounds. So G minor 7, G minor 9, G minor 11, G minor 13. Any of those types of sounds could be used in the context of actually having a minor 5, which is really rare. We run into it more in old folk music, not so much in jazz or classical or even pop, rock, folk. We don't see it that much, but occasionally we do run into the minor 5. Naturally, though, we usually just see it as a major chord, and then it's a dominant 7th chord. In a minor key, you can have that dominant 7th, meaning a major chord with a flatted 7th, so G7. You can also have it be G9, or G7 sharp 11, or G13. What is more common in, say, the jazz context, or then perhaps this happens some in pop and rock and so on, but what happens in the jazz context especially is we're going to have an altered dominant, which means we're going to alter those fifths and or the 9th. And then we know that a sharp 11 is the same pitch as a flat 5, and a flat 13 is the same pitch as a sharp 5. So they're a little bit interchangeable, especially on the guitar, where we can't play a natural 5 and a sharp 5 and a flat 5 because they're all in the same strings. So whether we're talking about doing a 13th chord or a chord with an altered 5th, an altered 13th, an altered 5th, an altered 11th, an altered 5th, they're going to all be on the same string, so we can't voice them all typically. But on piano, you got 10 fingers and you got a lot more notes. Sometimes these things can be voiced differently. But on guitar, for our purposes, almost always, if we see an altered 13th, it's going to be the same voicing we would have, like a flat 13, it's going to be the same voicing we would have for a sharp 5, because those pitches are inharmonically the same. So we can have with this our just plain old alt written, which would mean alter that 5th, alter that 9th. If you have them both in the chord, or if you just have one in the chord, just alter that one. But we can have the sharp 9 or a flat 9. So we could have the G7, could have that sharp 9 or flat 9, or the natural 9 back up there, but sharp 9 or flat 9. It could also, with this, we could be looking at chords where we just have the flat 5 or the sharp 5. We could have those just by themselves. I didn't put that on here, I probably should have. But we can have the combinations of the different options where we can have sharp 5 and sharp 9, or sharp 5 and flat 9. If I can do it up high in this key. We could have a flat 9 against a flat 5, a flat 9 against a flat 9 against a flat 5, flat 9 against a sharp 5. So we can have all those combinations that exist with that one. Over on the 7 chord, we have different options here, as you know. So it depends on if it's coming off the leading tone pitch, meaning the pitch that's a half step below the root, or the subtonic, if it's a whole step below the root. So when it's a leading tone, we're going to have a diminished chord, fully diminished 7th. So in this case, being in the key of C, that would be B diminished. That's what we're going to see there. If it's off the subtonic, the flatted 7th one, we're going to have just a major chord. So in that case, we're going to have B flat. So in the case of that, it's going to be a dominant 7th chord, major chord with that minor 7th or that flatted 7th, which means we can have that dominant 9, that dominant 7 sharp 11, or that dominant 13 as well. So those are how those options work in a minor key. Of course, you'll get the different voicings going through, creating the different chord progressions as we've seen in previous lessons. Now, a natural thing for me to do with these lessons would be to walk us through some chord progressions in major keys and minor keys that use these. But I'm going to hold off on doing that because in the jazz course, where we're going through lots of different tunes, all of these things naturally come out there. So if you want to see this in action, you just got to check out those jazz lessons where we're working on comping the chords, or where we're working on playing a melody, comping the chords, and improvising. In those lessons right now, I'm getting into lots of these types of things. So I'm not going to double up with the Theory Thursdays at this point, but later on I may come back and do something that supplements what's happening there, that helps clarify or add more depth, that makes sense to have, rather than having 2 lessons on 2 different series that are basically the same thing. So right now, because of what I'm covering in the jazz course and will be covering in the jazz course over the next several months, I'm going to suspend and hold off on just going through chord progressions specifically and analyzing them and that sort of thing. A lot of times in the jazz context, what we get is pieces, and then we go through other keys. We modulate through a lot of different keys, or we tonicize in keys just a little bit. All those things are very cool, but I'm going to come back to that here or in the jazz series as that progresses, because those kinds of things make sense to do there because they happen there the most. Whereas most of the time in pop, rock, and folk, these things come in as a special color here and there, but it's not necessarily the whole chord progression that's based off these types of sounds. We will just sometimes get these sounds coming in, and it's nice to be like, oh, that chord has this minor 7th that's been added to it. So trying to stick away from doing what I will be doing in the jazz course here until we've done that in the jazz course, and can see how it can supplement what we're doing there and other places here on Theory Thursdays. One other thing to mention that I also mentioned in the last lesson, we talked about add 9 chords, where the 9th is just added to a major or minor triad. Any of the major or minor chords can just have the 9th added to it. So we could have C minor with the add 9. You could have the E flat major with an added 9th. So you can get those kinds of sounds happening. The suspended chords that we talked about, sus4 or sus2, any major or minor chord through here could be replaced by the suspended quality instead, and that's even when we're stacking the colors on, whether it be a 6th or a 7th, or even 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. The 11ths and suspensions don't work together because the natural 11 and the 4 are the same. So we don't have that there, but the 13th and the 9th can be added to something that's suspended, which is why sus4 add 9 is also included up here. So these types of things can be used in place, and occasionally they do. We especially see them in the dominant context and even in the secondary dominant context, but these are also options that happen. So in the next Theory Thursday lesson, we're going to dissect chord symbols a little bit. Now that we've got all this information, sometimes it's really helpful to just sort of see the chord symbols and work backwards and be able to dissect them and recognize the different parts of a chord symbol, so we can know what types of voicings are being talked about when we run into a chord symbol that has one of these or multiple of these. So that'll be the next Theory Thursday lesson. Of course, I got the jazz lessons on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Saturdays, we're working on improvising in the rock, blues, and pop styles. So super cool. And there are Technique Tuesday lessons. So lots of great lessons coming out, and there's over 900 lessons already on the channel that go through lots of different topics and so on. So lots of great ways to get help. Keep having fun, take care, and we'll see you again.
If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For more in-depth lessons and to progress through a free guitar course, check out my Guitar 101 series on YouTube and my guitar method books, which all come with access to hours of in-depth video lessons. You can find more information about me and my products at kristenbromley.com. Take care.